working on something really complex, all this math, and you're like, wait a minute, these numbers don't crunch. It doesn't add up
Uh-huh.
properly, and you got to
Yeah.
start over. So who are you in that moment? Which version of you do you choose to be in that moment? And always recognize, yes, there is always the complaint available. There is the despondent, yeah, absolutely. And you can see that. And sometimes all you can see is that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're in that moment, I think that's the time for the break. That's the time for the
Hmm.
walk out and go watch a bee pollinating a flower. That's what I do. I'll walk out to my garden. I'm a barefoot guy. I walk around barefoot in my garden all the time. And it helps to
Being
ground
in contact with nature.
directly,
Yeah.
right? Directly.
Yeah.
And so that
Sometimes
is
I need
for
that.
me, that's when I go like, oh, I'm like this. I was like, wait a minute, I got my panties in a bunchie again. Fine. I forgive myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's human. And then I'll go change the channel in my mind, raise my vibe up again, whatever that means, putting on some music and, shaking my booty
Yeah.
just for a moment.
I like I like to go to the beach and watch waves coming and going. Like
Awesome.
it makes me calm some way.
There's a rhythm to it, right? There's that,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of science to what sort of soothes the human mind. And one of them is rhythm. And you go look at, well, in church, there's a lot of music involved. And there's predictable
Mm-hmm.
songs, or people, as soon as they start singing that specific song, it puts them in a state of mind of inner peace. Right. And so we have that. And you may not go with a holy song. They're all holy as far as I'm concerned. If you let it into yourself and it brings you back up, that's a holy act. So I think that's part of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that the rhythm creates this deafferentation in the brain, where we are soothed, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
sympathetic, rising to act. Your heart goes faster, so you can run faster away from the bear. And then there's
Yeah.
parasympathetic, which allows you to come down from all that heat and speed so that you don't die from stress. You can't live there, right? That's the afterburners. That once in a while you do that so that you can push through and be a warrior in that moment. But you can't stay there all the time, and people die from stress in so many different ways. And they die from the things that they do to soothe the stress, right? The eating and the ingesting and the medicating and all those things, because they didn't go straight to the center point of what they really needed to do, things that are truly effective in soothing their soul. And again, that I've talked about this before, that inner silence is an uncomfortable place for the Western mind that likes to fill space with content, because at the core of my being, we project, we believe that if I sit in absolute silence, I'm going to freak out even more, because that's all that's at the core of me. That's a lie. That's an illusion, right? Almost like when you
Yeah.
look into the water, you have a reflection of the sky, but what's really under the water is something very different. And I believe that the human mind underneath the mind is inner peace. I believe that's there when you peel the onion and you get down to the bottom of it. It ain't ugly. It's not panicky. It's not worried. It's absolute calm peace. That's who we are. So we have to stop filling the space with stuff, with
Yeah,
societally
I think it's
approved methods.
easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do it because it's easier, like to fill the space with stuff, whatever stuff it is, than to deal with your
Mhm.
inner self, like
Mhm.
listen yourself in the comments or not listening at all to anything. It's easier to consume anything like TikTok and you
Right.
know.
Yes, I have to take the piece into me because I'm dirty. My mind is dirty and busy and angry and whatever it is. And I understand it. And you've got to forgive yourself for it, because it's all we were taught. We were not taught enough in the process of achieving inner space quickly. That return to the inner space, that's a very, very center point of our consciousness. That's not talked about very much. That's like weird woo-woo stuff. But you hang out with a Buddhist monk and you're like, wow, this dude lives here all the time. you know. Well, that also means that skill developed through things like that, through paddling your kayak in a rhythm, and you're not on your phone and you're not anything else, and you're in the present moment, or whatever that means for you. That space that you create is something that is outside of time. It has nothing to do with context or what the drama of the world is in your particular corner of it right now. It's irrelevant because you can tap into it right now at any point. That's huge. That's freeing. And it means that you don't grope for something outside of yourself to soothe yourself, whatever. And it's not always fear. Sometimes it's anger. Sometimes it's frustration and the feeling like I just can't, I'm not big enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not smart enough. And it's all lies. It's all lies, but it's lies that build up a belief in the moment that that's true. It doesn't matter whether it's true or not. If you believe it, it's true for you. So
I
change what
agree with you.
you believe. Yeah.
But I have my problem is in the other side because I'm I noticed that I'm think a lot, and because of this, I try to point out possible risks and future problems, and I try to think about the solutions to cover these possible risks. And
Yeah.
I noticed that it is a vicious cycle
Yes.
because I'm thinking, and anything happen, but I'm noticing that I'm just thinking about all of this.
Yep. You're not the only one. So everybody feels like they're the only one that's neurotic. And the thing is that if you think of it as I am those thoughts, I am that pattern of thinking that is the looping of the worry of trying to project possible risks and how it could go wrong. Believe me, Dad, I know that one really well. You see every outlet in the room that your kid could stick a fork into, you know. And metaphorically, do that with everything else too. And that's the ego mind, right? That's the body's mind, which is very logical, right? And it doesn't really derive its understanding from an intuitive perspective of inner power and recognition that you can avoid those risks. If you're listening to the inner guidance that's a little less logical, it forgets all about that magic stuff that you're capable of. And it just becomes only trusting in fear to protect you, worry to protect you. If I can project the possibilities, then I can see the field and avoid those things. But you can't avoid everything with your logical mind. And there has to be a trust. There has to be a surrender that if I just let go of those possibilities, yes, I've seen them, and it wasn't stupid of me to look for those possibilities, right? Don't judge yourself for it. But I can then rise up above that battleground, you know, and see that it's going to be all right. Why? Because I'm going to be there. That it's not probabilities, it's not the rolling of dice. I'm here to negotiate this complex reality in an intuitive way, almost the way that you ever see Dune. They have those guys that take the spice so that they can see basically psychically ahead of time, so that the spacecraft can avoid running into a star or something like that, right? Because the sensors won't reach that far, so you need a psychic. Well, I think we're all a little bit psychic in some ways. I guess you could call it that. That we all have the ability, if we open our minds and get out of the worry mindset, that we're capable of seeing which risks are the likely ones. What's the more probable ones? I don't have to look at every possibility, right? I mean, a meteor could fall on your head right now. Could. It's possible, but it's not likely, right? And then you start to sort of pare it down to the risks that are salient, that are here and now, right? Because otherwise, you're just worrying about everything that's going on in the world. Worry about every possible thing that could go wrong. Um, I highly recommend. My kid just made me watch this yesterday. I don't know if you ever see the movie Inside Out. It's really good. It's a kids movie.
Yes.
They just came out with a
Uh-huh.
they came out with a new one with several new characters within the persona, right? It's personifying aspect of the human mind very beautifully, pretty accurately, I think, in some ways. In one of those characters was exactly that guy, the one of anxiety, where he's always considering every single possible risk to try to avoid them. And then what is your world like if Anxiety is in the driver's seat. And what happens to creativity when anxiety is in the driver's seat, right? Shrinkage, right? What happens to your joy and your happiness, right? It all just sort of goes in the background. And it's not just you, it's every single one of us. So we have to recognize that part of our consciousness is ego mind. It's the body trying to stay alive and avoid risks. And it uses the prefrontal cortex, the front part of the mind, as a projector of possibilities, but it's also a projector of what is more likely because you're focusing on it. Because what the mind focuses on, it increases the probabilities of. Right? That's kind of a heavy realization. Right. And then there's this other part of us, the larger part of our consciousness that we're not in when we're in our thinking mind. We're not in it when we're in our worried mind, our sense of self with the small s. So what gets me through all of the stuff that I do day to day, with planets that come racing up at me on a daily basis and all that stuff, is that I try to keep both perspectives. It makes me a terrible Buddhist, quite frankly, to also embrace my ego and whatever you want to call your cosmic perspective. But I believe that sanity requires both. Not to hate on your worry self, just say thanks, man. Thanks for trying to point out what's risky, but I can't only listen to you. Not only because I'm a powerful creator and I can negotiate complexity in the moment because I'm intelligent, right? I'm not AI. I'm truly intelligent, right? We all are.
I have a question. Have you ever given up on something like something that you were afraid of? Because I have the feeling that you have never. Like it seems so
No, yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
don't give
deal
up
with that.
on them. I don't give on, but I do try to, um, I'll climb that mountain per se, metaphorically,
Hmm.
right? Like caving or something like that, right? Small caves. Ooh,
Hmm.
that gets my panties in a bunchy. When I get into a tight, we call it a squeeze in caving.
Hmm.
It scares the hell out of me. And that's why I do it. That's why I do it, because it's more redeeming than doing something that maybe would scare the average person, but it doesn't scare me. Jumping out of an airplane doesn't really scare me. And I have measured my heart rate, blood pressure, stuff like doesn't bother me because
Even on your
I've done it. I've done it thousands of
even
times.
in your first time.
I wasn't that scared. I was just happy. I was in eager joy. I finally get to do this. I've been visualizing
Hmm.
this since I was a little kid. Kindergarten. I mean, literally jumping off the swings. I call it the parachute game, right? So because I had so much lined up to make that be easy for me, there's less learning in some ways. But man, I go into a cave and suddenly I remember all these other experiences of when my cousin David put a blanket over my head and wouldn't let me out when I was like 5. I remember aspects of that panicky state. I remember all these other things. And that gives me the opportunity to climb a mountain that's meaningful to me. Because if I can get to that place of panicky, where you really think you're freaking out, that you can't go on another second, right? To relax the body, soothe, the thought creator, the ones that's the part of you that's creating the negative thoughts, the negative visualizations, the conclusions that you're screwed, the belief structure that this is it, and dissolve it all. Dissolve it all in that moment of being underground, underneath, you know, thousands or millions of tons of rock, and just be absolutely at peace again. Despite the
But how do
fact that
you
that
do
fear is
that?
there. You
It's
breathe and you
really
calm
hard.
down. Well, you can argue for your limitations or you can argue for your power. It's your choice. Right. So I choose to argue for my power over my emotions, that if I don't do anything, nothing happens. So if I just stop and I breathe and I calm myself down and I force a smile on my face, even though every cell in my body is wanting me to, like, scream or shudder or whatever it is, I just choose not to do that. Right. I choose to be something else through acting differently. And it changes not just how my body feels, but it changes the thoughts that my body creates because of that different physiology. My vibration, if you could call it mentally and emotionally, raises up. And now I start to see the spaces. I see how big it is. I say, wait a minute, I can move like this. I can move like that. A moment ago, I was bigger. Every time you go caving and you get nervous, you get bigger and you get stuck because of your stiffness. And then you relax. Like, oh, I can do this. I can do that. I can actually scratch
Just
that
like a
up.
cat.
Right. And you become loose and adaptable, malleable, and free. And when I realize my freedom when I'm in those circumstances, now I've again worked on that, like exercising a muscle. I worked on the part of me that is self-soothing, and my doors start swinging open. Doors that used to be locked, I locked them, right? I was the one that says I can't. That's the lock, is the belief that you can't. And when those doors start swinging open, you realize you're a lot bigger than your fear was, sort of painting as a picture of who you really are. That there's more to that canvas than what the fear narrowed down. This is safe. That's you just stay here in the house. Don't do anything, right? Never not be afraid, right? The Crudes, you don't go outside the cave. The winning formula of never, not be afraid. Courage is dangerous. If you stay in the village, you won't have to deal with getting eaten by a tiger. But if you go out of the village, you might come home with dinner for the whole village. It's risky to do the things that matter. It is. And that's a graduation from when we feel safe as a little kid, where everything comes to us. And at some point we rise to the challenges. I'm going to get out there. I'm going to be the warrior that solves bigger problems despite risks, because I know myself. Because I know I'm a problem solver. I know I'm a self-soother. And I know that I can intuitively feel when the danger is enough that I need to go a different direction. Because sometimes it's a dead end. Right? Sometimes you run into certain circumstances, it just, you add it up. And this isn't okay. Okay, fine. Change directions. You got lots of other options. But that particular vector is a terminal vector, whatever that means in that circumstance. And again, that's not your fear. That is your recognition that this is just not a winnable scenario. It's a Kobayashi Maru. I don't know if there's any Star Trek enthusiast here.
That's how, and also, how do you, firstly, if you have any external motivation, because when you talk about jumping and doing high risk sports, I see that this is your motivation. Doing this is enough. But for instance, in our job, I feel at least that no one's dreams of being an accountant as a kid, so it doesn't have that powerful. So I need to get external
Right.
motivation. For instance, I'm doing this because of something else. This is a
Mhm.
means to an end.
Well,
But
those are good
I often
questions to ask.
I often forgot what is the end. So when I'm stressful, so do you have any technique to, okay, I'm doing
Yeah.
this. It's not jumping over an airplane. It's
Why?
finishing a spreadsheet.
Yep.
But I need to understand why I'm doing this
Yep.
and
I,
remember it. In
I think,
stressful moments, it's so
yeah,
hard to remember.
I think it's individual, isn't it? I think each of you has
Mhm.
your own sense of purpose and why you've chosen, at least in this path right now, this part of the journey. You're all going to have different reasons, but if you dig a little bit deeper and you describe who you are in that role, right? Not just sort of an accountant in general. This is you as an accountant, right? It's specific. Why do you get off on this? Why does this uplift you? Who are you being? And of course, part of this may have to do with relationships. In this role, who are you to others? Are there other people that think better of you because of the life choices you made? That's not a bad thing. It's only a bad thing if you give them the permission to, sort of put you down for your life choices, right? You don't have to give that authority to anybody else, but there's nothing wrong with other people appreciating your perspective in what you chose to do, right? What you chose to perfect, right? That's what you guys do. You figure out the numbers and you figure out the truth and you get a larger perspective of, somebody's business. And I mean, gosh, it helps me as a business owner to have folks like you to really sort through this mountain because we get overwhelmed. You understand more, right? So in a lot of ways, your role is that of a healer, to come in and see a larger perspective. They say all the great healers, they came in and they didn't see illness. They saw the healthy person behind the illness. And that's what they nurtured. And in a lot of ways, that's, you guys are showing truth, numerically speaking, right? So this can be another way to look at this, to find the value in what you do. I mean, the people that cut hair, man, they're working with the crown chakra. That's a big job. They don't even realize how much a healer they are, most of them, except for the ones that do tarot cards on the side, which that exists too. So I think that is a beginning of this process, but I'm trying to spur thought, not to fill content with these ideas. I want you to sit down with a notebook, big fat notebook, and write down everything that makes this meaningful to you, your role in it. What is the value of this in your life? Not just necessarily, am I changing the world by doing this? Well, everybody's changing the world, whether they know it or not. But how are you changing your world in a way that's helpful, that gives you greater self-esteem, greater pride in your work, in not just the conclusion of the work, but the grace that you sort of negotiate through this stuff. How do you do it smoothly? How do you do it in a way that if somebody watches you, God, man, you're like, you don't lose your shit. You just kind of keep on going. And when it's not right, you just say, all right, let's start at the beginning again. You know that one? All right, let's start at the beginning. Let's get a larger perspective. What are we missing here? Why is this number that far off? I know that one. And I know that feeling of being overwhelmed. So how can you help, for instance, your clients not feel overwhelmed? That's a gift that you can give somebody, right? To uplift them and share a perspective of hope and truth of the way it is. Sometimes the hope comes from realizing the truth that this business model that you've been operating under sucks. And you got to make a change. Otherwise, there's just not enough coming in, go out. You demonstrate that so that now they have this larger perspective. Oh, you know what? I think I need to add something to my business. I need to shift my market, or I need to shift the way, I'm presenting myself. But that can change it. Because sometimes there's no more juice to come out of the lemon. You can squeeze and squeeze. You're like, no, I know that you wanted to sell smart sparklers and snakes, but what people really want is bottle rockets. Change your business, right? So this is where you guys have the opportunity to be more than just, an accountant in a firm. Your careers are expanding as your wisdom expands. Maybe 10 years from now, have you thought about that? In 10 years, how are you going to utilize what this role is in helping people? I can't answer that for you, because it's
Yeah,
different
that's great.
for all of you.
I do have a notebook where I put everything that I wanted to do or want to be or want to have. And that's a lot of things, but in stressful moments, those goes away because they are not entirely related to the job.
Yeah.
I don't see a bright future with the things that I want, with a peaceful living, a nice house in the spreadsheet. It's hard
Yes.
to connect those dots
Sure.
sometimes.
Yeah, well,
So
sometimes we're down the bottom of Maslow's pyramid, and that's fine,
exactly,
right?
exactly.
Yeah, and that's okay. That's fine. That's just that moment. But I urge everybody to also, when you're in those hot moments, when you're in this mode, tiny, 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 to also have another part of your mind that is also, sort of, it's expanded, that the meaning of this, where you're going. And right now, I'm just gonna, take a deep breath. I'm gonna hold my breath and go underwater. My snorkel's gonna fill, but I know that there's up there. Right? I mean, that's if that doesn't just describe accounting, I don't know what does. But there's an immersion into the process, and if you love how good you are at that job, if you love who you're being as you're using your whole mind, and you love the precision of your mind, and that left brain is just having so much fun with it, then when you get to these places where it's a little bit more of a struggle because it's more complicated, maybe there was mistakes made or something like that, you forgive yourself, and all of this is just a game. This is just planet Earth. I'm just sort of making my way uh in a meaning based experience. What is the meaning? That's the question I want you to keep asking yourself. What is the meaning of my role for me? Why is this important? Why is this valuable? And take everybody else's perspective of you out of the equation, because it doesn't matter, right? To you. It matters to them, but it has nothing to do with you. That a tendency to judge others that everybody has, it's a waste of our time to judge others by our own trip, our own expectations of what is right and wrong and all that stuff. So you throw that all away. And I think it's possible there may be times when that the comparisons, right? That's what judgment is. There's a comparison of one to another. I'm working and I'm on that number pad. I'm on the number pad, entering data, right? That was one of my very first jobs, data entry at Prudential Insurance Company of America. And I didn't follow through with that job as my final fruition, but I did enjoy, I enjoyed the precision of it. I enjoyed the fact that I could do it right, that I could act like a machine that has intelligence, that beyond what a machine could actually do. That's pretty cool, And so I applied that to the math that's involved with parachute design, or solving, navigational stuff with vectors and planning routes down the mountains in Norway, all that stuff. I'm applying the same level of precision to this, but my life changed, and this is now the appropriate use of that aspect of my mind. It's fine either way. It's all the process of evolution of a soul. We're never done. Your whole lifetime, you're just going to be expanding and understanding more and knowing yourself more. That's the part that's knowing the world is it's too big. The world is too complicated because there's all these different perspectives, all these different universes. Really, their cosmology is different from yours. It's irrelevant. Your universe is what matters. Your dreams, that notebook of like all the things that, someday I want to have a house that looks like this and whatever. And the universe may say, it's not in your best interest. I could give it to you, that Maserati, but you're going to crash it, So we don't always want what we want in the long run. And then to go deeper into the derivation of our desires, I think is important too, because many of the things that we want are for reasons that if we examine them further, maybe we don't want them. Maybe it was somebody else's idea. Maybe it was culture and movies that made us want it. Maybe it was how we look to others that matters. And again, that's our perspective of the outside world having authority over my inner world. Is that to your benefit? I think in the end, if you want to be a truly sort of balanced, happy person, that stuff becomes irrelevant. Other people's view of you, their dreams for you, it has to become irrelevant. Not in terms of pushing it away, but just saying, I hear what you're saying. I love that vision of me that you're projecting. Sounds lovely, but I'm gonna do it my way. I'm gonna do it a little differently. Mom, dad, whatever, superiors in work, whatever. It's an ongoing process.
I have a question. You mentioned that when you worked as a that data entry person, that you did this job, that you felt great because you knew that you were doing the right thing, that you were in control of it. But how to deal with a situation when you don't have control of it, like you are 100% on not on control of it, but you have to do it anyway. Like it needs to be done, and you need to do it, but you don't have control over it. Like you don't know if you're doing the right thing or not, but you need to complete it. Like how to deal with that without freaking out.
Yeah.
You're
You
like
are your
80%
own
sure.
checking.
Hmm?
Yeah.
So there's some the resonance there. I could feel that a bunch of people
Go
going,
ahead, Jim.
"Ah, I know what she's talking about."
I said it's like you're 80% sure, not 100.
Yeah. The feeling is about you are your own check. It's like just in our brain is correct because we don't have any parameter or perspective to compare.
Yeah, like doing things for the first time or being your own reviewer.
Yep.
You're not 100% sure that it's correct, but you gotta trust, right? It's tough.
Yeah.
You do. Trust is not an easy thing. It's probably the hardest of all things, self-trust. And I mean, with math stuff, it's simpler in a lot of ways. There is a finite answer. There's an empirical reality from that perspective. Um, but I think either way, there has to be this levity is the wrong word, but a levitation over the role, above the role. I am not this role. This is all for fun. This is all for entertainment. This is all for, polishing my skills in different ways.
You
And
do it for the plot.
yeah, I'm just gonna do it for the entertainment. I got to do something in this world. And if you realize after years and years that what you're doing isn't working for you, then you're gonna have to make a shift. And that's all right too. That's fine too, but you may find value in the action down the road. Even the parts that feel mundane, even the parts that feel amorphous and uncertain, or am I am I spending these 3 hours for nothing? That's a fear that can stop you in your tracks right there, that your action, your work is meaningless, right? But that presupposes that time is relevant. And yes, you're getting older, right? With every breath, every day, you're getting older. Yes, it's true. But from another perspective, there's a part of you that doesn't. There's a part of you that, the later you'll be an old fart, gray hair, wrinkles, all that stuff, and you're still going to be you. You're still going to feel like you, and the things that you love and hate and whatever, it's going to be a little bit more clarified, but it's still just you, right? And so, given that timelessness of you, does it really matter? Because a lot of the insignificant things you're just going to forget anyway. Being 57, I can tell you, there's a lot of things that I just don't even remember. And people say things like, Brian, remember that time that,
I'm already there. I'm already
yeah,
there.
yeah, I don't remember because the mind is a filter for relevance, right? And so the things that you do in your day that are the same as yesterday, that just dissolves. The consciousness doesn't hang on to that because there's no significant importance to that. And the other things that in that moment there was heightened emotion, there was heightened exhilaration, there was something that happened where you didn't know if you could, and then you tried and you did. That's the shit you're going to remember, right? And that can be physical risk, it can be love risks. That's huge. I mean, there's nothing more dangerous than opening, your heart to someone else. But all of that stuff, I think, will be in the end what matters. You'll remember the really good breaks that you take in between work more than you will the work sometimes. All the parachutes that I built, I don't remember all the colors, but I do remember the moments when I saw a video of somebody landing that parachute that I built and the happy dance that they made after they landed. That's the emotional high mark that gave my life meaning. And I literally don't remember the 40 something hours of sewing. Take time out of it, make it irrelevant, and just see that there are certain things that, quote, take more time, It's a block of time, but it's still at the end of that time, it's still you. It's still you looking for meaning, waking up into the present moment again.
Yeah, I think this one was a huge one, maybe for all of us this week, of finding meaning, finding strength and confidence in your work when it's not 100%. Uh, you're not sure that it's 100% correct.
Yep.
Also, it's so important to see yourself outside work, right? As a data entry guy, as yourself. I don't do just that, but mostly.
Yep.
You have to get off it at some point, right? Block a time to get off it and see, why am I doing this? Why is this important? How the relationships build with one another. I am more and more seeing that the data is not the relevant part, it's the people. For me,
Yeah.
at least. For me at least, is
Yes.
how, for instance, Nicole said to me, I write some email to the client, and she was like in my DMs, that was a great email. I'm so proud of you. And I'm like, that's what I'm looking for. Not the answer from the client, or maybe the client too, but
Mhm.
not the action of typing the email.
Yeah.
It's this feeling of, that was great. This is very well explained, and searching for that. And you can only see that when you take a step back, right, and see how people feel about your job. How do you feel about your job? The job itself is not that important. It's just part of it. I
It's
think
just
that's resonates with me all week, and probably with others too.
yeah. That sense of
And
pride.
when you put it that way, it's so clear. I think we should have you more here. To be honest, I'm gonna talk to
I'm here.
Nicole.
I'm here. This is what I do. Well, it's one of the things that I do. There's many others. But I think it's the more important thing, I mean, teaching people how to jump out of airplanes has been a lot of fun, but it's given me experiences and information and a perspective that applies to other things. That's the part where I'm extracting that and sending it out to the whole world. Like, wow, this is directly relevant to everything that's important to me. And as far as I can tell, everybody else is on a very parallel journey. It's just you're removing certain, certain specifics and imposing a different one. Okay, you're a fireman. All right, well, how is this relevant to you? It's all the same. And if you see it that way, then you can even transcend your own role completely from moment to moment. Not all the time, not when you're in here, you're the role when you're doing the action. But to have those moments to step out and go, I am not only this, I'm bigger than this. I have a more expansive imagination of what I wish to do with this experience, this meat suit that I'm wearing, and interacting with all these other beings that appear so separate, that when you look into Jungian psychology, have you guys looked into that? The collective unconscious. It's
That I'm not aware of.
Carl Jung. He spoke of the collective unconscious, that at the base of every consciousness, at the core of it, is the same being that's inside of all of us, like an octopus, right? And that idea that I feel is true. But that idea helps us to really reach out in compassion for other people's perspective, because like Ram Dass said, oh, you're in that one. You're me in that one. How are you going to hate anybody then? You know what I mean? And then you have this ability to see from multiple perspectives, which makes you a next level human being. Instead of just me seeing you and telling my story of you, then I flip the roles and I go, oh, here, now I'm you looking at me. And that really helps with every leadership role that you take on. That instead of being a power over, power under trip where you're only the role and you're kind of getting off puffed up after, oh, I'm the manager, I'm the boss, I'm the captain. It's irrelevant.